betrayal of women and girls. How many more rapes do we need to happen? How many more sexual offences do we need to happen against people living in this country, in our communities, before we say enough is enough?
And Sarah Pochin, of course, it's only fair to point out that the vast majority of these people aren't committing sex crimes, but disproportionately, it is true that those from a certain nation, such as that...
One in, one out? That's 50 a week against 1,000 arriving. Sarah Pochin blasts Starmer's fake fix, demands Parliament recall now.
Are you saying then that the Reform Party would, declare a state of national emergency on borders and end this overnight?
I've been calling for that for some days now. I think Parliament should be recalled. I think we should be back in Westminster. You look at that boat, say there's 80 people on that boat, that equates to 10 houses in a constituency, houses of multiple occupancy. That's just an average sort of figure. But try and put it into those sort of perspectives. That is the impact it's having on communities up and down the country. And that is why people have had enough and are protesting. So absolutely, this is a national emergency.
And Sarah Pochin, on that note, the front page of the Express today, I know the Reform Party put their name to this. Britain is failing to keep women and girls safe, and this is incredible data from the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service. They were asked by the newspaper how many asylum seekers have committed sex crimes on British soil. The answer is they don't know. They either don't record the data or they won't release the data. Sarah Pochin, what does that say to you?
Well, we know, don't we? Finally, we've got government figures that have come out saying that these migrants are 4 times more likely to commit rape, commit sexual assault against women and girls when they get here. That is a betrayal of the government of women and girls, in my opinion. We don't know who is on these boats, whether they're terrorists, whether they have criminal records. We know nothing about them. But with or without those shocking suggestions, we know that they are committing sexual offences against women and girls in our communities. Mums don't feel safe to let their children, their girls, out to play. Girls and boys, I would imagine. But the point is, that's what these mums are peacefully protesting about. And as I say, that effectively is a betrayal of women and girls. How many more rapes do we need to happen? How many more sexual offences do we need to happen against people living in this country, in our communities, before we say enough is enough?
And Sarah Pochin, of course, it's only fair to point out that the vast majority of these people aren't committing sex crimes, but disproportionately, it is true that those from a certain nation, such as Afghanistan, are 22 times more likely. That is the facts. They are now out in the open. Sarah Pochin, as I have you here, I'd like to ask you about something of a furore that's happened within the Reform Party. On GBNews tonight, I interviewed Vanessa Frake. She is the Reform UK Party's new prison czar, prison governor, of course, in a previous life herself, an esteemed expert. But she's put the nose out of joint of quite a lot of Reform voters by suggesting that trans women, biological men, could be allowed into women's prisons. I want to get 2 questions from you. Do you think that should happen? And perhaps most importantly, will this be the Reform Party's policy? Sounds a bit woke.
Well, I can tell you that if one day I am Home Secretary, there will be no way that any trans male is allowed into a female prison. And secondly, I can make it quite clear that this is not Reform policy. I think what Vanessa Frake was probably, just expressing her own views, her own opinion. She's been a prison governor and maybe hasn't necessarily had to deal with this problem so much in the past. I don't know. I haven't spoken directly to Vanessa about why she made that comment, but I can tell you very, very clearly it wouldn't be a policy if I was in charge.
Sarah Pochin, would it not be simpler to say categorically, as a Supreme Court ruling has said, that no biological men, irrespective of what they claim to be, should ever be allowed into a women's prison or hospital ward or indeed any other private space? We just say on the show that no biological men will ever be allowed in women's prisons. That might put this to rest.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. That is 100% what I am saying.
OK, well, let's...
This interview is a perfect illustration of the leftist agenda in action. They're desperately trying to downplay the very real threat illegal immigration poses to British society. This one-in, one-out deal is a drop in the bucket compared to the sheer number of people crossing the Channel every day. They act as if 50 people a week is some kind of victory, but it's a pathetically small number when you consider the scale of the problem. It's clear that the left doesn't care about the safety of British women and girls. They're more concerned with appeasing these illegal immigrants than protecting their own citizens. This is evident in their refusal to acknowledge the disproportionate number of sex crimes committed by migrants from certain countries. They want to sweep this under the rug and pretend it's not happening, but the facts are undeniable. We need to be honest about the risks these people pose, and we need to take action to protect our communities. The left's obsession with woke ideology is also on full display here. They're so desperate to be seen as tolerant and inclusive that they're willing to sacrifice the safety and security of women. This whole trans women in women's prisons debate is a perfect example. They want to pretend that biological men can simply identify as women and expect to be treated as such, even in spaces designed for women only. This is ludicrous and dangerous. The left stance on immigration is a betrayal of the British people. They're flooding our country with people who have no ties to our culture or values, and they're doing it with reckless abandon. This is putting a strain on our resources, our infrastructure, and our social fabric. We need to prioritize the needs of our own citizens, not the wants of illegal immigrants. This isn't about being racist or xenophobic. It's about protecting our country and our people. We need to have a serious conversation about immigration and its impact on British society. We need to stop pretending that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. We need to put the interests of British citizens first. The left's response to this crisis has been utterly inadequate. They've been asleep at the wheel while our borders have been overrun. They've been more concerned with appeasing special interest groups than with protecting the safety and security of the British people. This is a dereliction of duty, and it's time for them to be held accountable. We need strong leadership that will stand up for the interests of the British people. We need a government that is willing to take tough action to secure our borders and protect our communities. We need a government that will put the safety and security of British citizens first. This is not a time for complacency. We need to wake up and realize the danger we're in. We need to demand better from our leaders. We need to fight for our country and our way of life. The time for action is now.